You know the feeling. You're sitting on your couch, you tap a button on your phone to order a specialized car part or maybe a high-end blender.
Oh yeah, we all do it.
Right. And the screen cheerfully guarantees it will be on your porch in exactly 2 days. We just take that completely for granted.
It feels like magic.
It really feels like magic. But to make that 2-day window a reality,
Yeah.
that product had to survive this massive, invisible regulatory gauntlet.
A huge gauntlet.
Because if that part was manufactured in, say, Monterey or Toronto, the physical border wall is just the very tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into our source material to look at the ultimate puppet master of the North American economy, which is U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And they are doing so much more than just checking passports.
Way more.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you picture the border, you usually picture a uniformed officer, a stop sign, and maybe, I don't know, an agriculture dog sniffing a trunk.
Right, that's the classic image.
But for a commercial 18-wheeler, the reality of that crossing is entirely different.
It is a fundamentally different universe. I mean, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, is actually the largest federal law enforcement agency within the Department of Homeland Security.
Wow, the largest.
The largest. And for commercial freight, they are the absolute, unquestioned gatekeeper. We're talking millions of commercial trucks crossing from Canada and Mexico every single year.
That's a massive amount of traffic.
It is. It represents hundreds of billions of dollars in trade. So if you pull back the curtain on what happens when a 53-foot trailer rolls up to that booth, the sheer volume of simultaneous auditing taking place is just staggering.
So if a truck pulls up to the border, they aren't just looking in the back for contraband, right? Like, what else is actually happening in that 30-second window at the primary inspection booth?
Well, the physical security aspect is just the baseline. Stopping narcotics, weapons smuggling, human trafficking, that is obviously their most publicized mandate.
Right, that's what makes the evening news.
Exactly. But simultaneously, that officer is executing a highly complex cargo inspection. They're verifying the physical freight against just a mountain of paperwork.
Like checking the actual boxes against a list.
Yeah, but deeper. They have to determine if the product is classified under the correct tariff code. They're scrutinizing the declared valuation of the goods. And they're looking really closely at the country of origin declarations to ensure nobody is trying to skirt trade laws.
Okay, wait, I want to pause on that valuation piece, because that bridges into something the source material calls trade compliance.
Yes, that's a huge part of it.
Why does a law enforcement agency at the border care if load of industrial steel is valued at, say, $10,000 versus $50,000?
That comes down to enforcing anti-dumping rules and international trade agreements.
Anti-dumping.
Yeah. So imagine a foreign government heavily subsidizes its domestic steel production, right? Which allows their factories to sell steel at a massive loss on the global market.
Okay, I follow.
The goal of that foreign entity is to flood the United States with artificially cheap steel to basically bankrupt American steel mills.
Oh, wow. So it's economic warfare, kind of.
Basically, yeah. And CBP is the agency tasked with stopping that. They have to look at the paperwork for that incoming load of steel, cross-reference it against global market rates, and if it looks suspiciously cheap, they apply anti-dumping tariffs right there to level the playing field.
So they're essentially acting as international financial regulators on the fly, while also like checking the trailer for hidden compartments.
Yes, exactly. And they are doing it entirely through data. This brings in their electronic manifest enforcement.
Which is what exactly?
Well, long before that truck even sees the physical border crossing, CBP's algorithms have already ingested and processed the electronic data of what is supposedly inside that trailer.
So they know what's coming before it gets there.
Precisely. What's fascinating here is the fundamental contradiction built into their job description. Congress has handed CBP a dual mandate.
Dual mandate, right.
On one hand, maintain an impenetrable security perimeter to stop all illegal activity, but simultaneously facilitate the flow of legitimate trade.
That sounds impossible.
It's incredibly hard. They have to catch the needle in the haystack, but they cannot afford to slow down the conveyor belt, because if they do, the North American economy just grinds to a halt.
You know, I keep picturing CBP as a high-stakes, hyper-strict bouncer at the world's most exclusive club.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. But instead of just checking your ID to see if you're 21, this bouncer is simultaneously running a criminal background check, auditing your last 3 years of taxes to make sure you aren't dodging tariffs.
Right.
Searching the seams of your shoes for hidden contraband and verifying that the designer jacket you're wearing isn't some counterfeit knockoff.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, and there is a line of 10,000 people behind you who all need to get inside in the next hour or the entire club goes bankrupt.
That perfectly captures the bottleneck they're managing. And because they literally cannot physically inspect every single box on every single truck without destroying the supply chain, CBP was forced into a corner.
So what do?
They had to build a digital filter. They needed a mechanism to separate the high-risk unknowns from the low-risk regular players long before anyone actually approaches the port of entry.
Which brings us to the alphabet soup of border logistics.
Oh yeah, so many acronyms.
The source material talks extensively about the VIP lanes, starting with a system called ACE. How does a truck actually get filtered through this system?
ACE stands for the Automated Commercial Environment. It is the mandatory digital foundation of the modern border. Every customs broker, importer, and motor carrier must submit their cargo manifests electronically through the ACE portal hours before the truck ever reaches the border.
Let's look into the hood of that algorithm for a second. Sure. What is ACE actually hunting for when it scans those manifests?
It's looking for anomalies and scoring risk. The system cross-references the historical data of the trucking company, the specific route they are taking, and the nature of the cargo.
Like looking for red flags.
Exactly. For example, if a manifest claims a trailer is carrying 20,000 pounds of raw cotton, but the weigh station scales indicate the truck is hauling 40,000 pounds, the ACE system flags the discrepancy instantly.
Because something doesn't add up.
Right. Or if a newly registered trucking company with no border crossing history is suddenly trying to move high-value electronics on a high-risk route, their risk score spikes. If you aren't compliant with ACE, your truck simply does not cross, period.
So ACE is the baseline hurdle. It's the bare minimum just to get in the door.
Exactly.
But to get the actual Fast Pass, the source material points to FAST and CTPAT. Let's break down the mechanics of how a trucking company actually gets VIP treatment.
So FST is the Free and Secure Trade Program, which gives approved carriers access to dedicated, physically separate lanes at the border, drastically reducing wait times.
Like the TSA pre-check of trucking?
Very much so. But to get access to those fast lanes, almost every link in your supply chain has to be heavily vetted under CTPAT, which is the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism.
Which was created right after 9/11.
Correct. It is a voluntary partnership between CBP and private industry, and we're talking over 11,000 participating companies.
Wow, 11,000.
Yeah, it's huge. To get into CTPAT, a trucking company literally has to open its books to the government. They must submit to rigorous audits of their physical security, their hiring practices, how they secure their truck yards, and how they train their drivers to inspect for tampering.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a massive amount of work.
Yeah.
But in exchange for absorbing all that administrative burden and self-policing, CBP officially designates you as a low-risk entity, which means fewer random cargo inspections and front-of-the-line privileges.
Okay, let me push back on the system for a second.
So go ahead.
Looking at the sheer amount of auditing, the compliance officers, the software required just to participate, this sounds like a massive pay-to-play moat.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. If you are a mid-sized fleet or a smaller carrier who simply doesn't have the administrative bandwidth or the capital to build a dedicated compliance department, you are essentially permanently relegated to the slow lane. You're being punished just for not being a mega corporation.
Well, CBP's perspective is that security inherently cannot be free. They are offering a calculated trade-off.
A trade-off how?
By shifting the burden of trust and the cost of security audits onto the private sector, CBP can focus its limited physical resources on the unknown, high-risk shipments.
Sure, from a systemic macroeconomic view, that makes total sense. But on the ground, if I'm a smaller trucking company, I'm still getting squeezed out of the market.
Yeah.
Shippers are going to look at my slower transit times and give the contract to the massive corporate fleet. It feels like border security is acting as a weapon against small business competition.
That tension is a brutal reality of modern cross-border logistics. You are entirely correct that compliance has morphed from a basic legal requirement into a massive competitive advantage.
Yeah, because time is money.
Exactly. Embracing CTPAT allows a company to offer guaranteed reliability to their customers, which allows them to outcompete rivals who are stuck waiting hours for random inspections. The barrier to entry has undeniably been raised.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. We talked about the macro-level systems, But we have to look at the human toll when this highly rigid digital system encounters a real-world error.
Yes, the real-world impact is severe.
Because rather than a row of dominoes, the cross-border supply chain operates more like a highly calibrated gear system. If one tiny tooth on one single gear breaks, it strips the gears for the entire machine down the line.
Let's walk through exactly how that breakdown happens. The people who bear the absolute brunt of this entire apparatus are the truck drivers.
Right, the ones actually behind the wheel.
Yeah. So imagine a driver picks up a load of automotive components at a warehouse in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, destined for an assembly line in Ohio.
Okay, pretty standard route.
It's very standard. The customs broker, the person handling the international paperwork, accidentally fat fingers a single digit on the tariff classification code when submitting to the ACE portal.
Just a simple typo?
A simple typo. So the driver pulls up to the primary inspection booth. The ACE system flags the discrepancy between the commercial invoice and the digital manifest.
And then what?
The CBP officer immediately directs that truck out of the flow of traffic and into secondary inspection.
And this is where the driver's livelihood starts hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
Because commercial drivers are operating on incredibly strict, legally mandated hours of service clocks.
Yes, exactly.
They only have a set number of hours they are legally allowed to work and drive each day.
And every hour spent parked in that CBP penalty box waiting for a broker to resolve a digital paperwork error is an hour burned on their physical driving clock.
Which is just devastating for their pay.
Oh, absolutely. Since the vast majority of over-the-road drivers are paid by the mile, a 6-hour delay at the border instantly destroys their daily productivity and just kills their paycheck.
But the gears keep stripping. The driver loses their wages, but then the motor carrier, the trucking company, has to start eating massive detention costs because their equipment is paralyzed.
Right, the truck isn't moving.
And then we move up the chain to the freight broker. This is the person sitting in an office in Chicago who arranged the whole movement. They are the one who has to pick up the phone and call the automotive factory in Ohio to explain why the parts aren't arriving tomorrow morning.
And for automotive manufacturing, a delayed truck doesn't just mean waiting around, it means a line down situation.
A line down, like the whole assembly line stops.
Yes. If an assembly line runs out of a specific component and has to halt production, that factory is losing tens of thousands of dollars every single minute.
Wow. Every minute.
Every single minute. The freight broker who hired that non-compliant truck is almost certainly going to lose that client permanently.
The blast radius of a single missing keystroke is just incredible.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this exact scenario is why major shippers now explicitly mandate that their carriers must be embedded in trusted trader programs like CTPAT.
It's all about minimizing that risk.
Risk mitigation is everything. A freight broker simply cannot afford to gamble on a carrier who might get flagged. The cost of failure, the fines from CBP, the administrative nightmare of resolving a cargo hold, and the total destruction of your reputation is just too high.
So the stakes are essentially life or death for these businesses, which means they have to constantly anticipate CBP's next move. They have to read the tea leaves of where enforcement is heading.
Yes, and it changes constantly.
According to the source material, the landscape of the border is shifting aggressively right now. What is CBP hunting for in this new frontier?
Well, CBP constantly adapts its algorithms to match global trends. Currently, we are seeing a heavily increased focus on supply chain security audits directed squarely at their own VIPs.
Wait, they're auditing the trusted traders?
Oh, heavily. CBP is actively auditing companies inside the CTPAT program because they know criminal organizations are highly sophisticated. Cartels know exactly which mega carriers get the green light at the border.
So they target the fast lanes.
Exactly. They actively attempt to infiltrate those specific trusted supply chains to move narcotics completely undetected.
So even if you have the fast pass, you are basically constantly looking over your shoulder.
Constantly. Furthermore, there is a massive crackdown on data accuracy within that ACE portal we discussed earlier.
How so?
CBP is no longer tolerating sloppy administrative work. That single typo we talked about earlier, it used to be a nuisance that could be quickly amended. Now, an incorrect cargo description can cause an instant, automated rejection of the manifest before the truck even leaves the yard.
But wait, how do companies actually function under that level of scrutiny?
Yeah.
Are we reaching a dangerous point of constant paranoia?
It certainly feels like it to a lot of brokers.
I mean, if minor, innocent clerical errors are treated by the system with the same immediate severity as an active smuggling attempt, How does any legitimate business operate without the constant feel that a slipped finger on a keyboard will shut down their entire cross-border network?
This raises an important question about the fundamental reality of modern logistics. From CBP's perspective, they do not see a typo. They see an anomaly in a data stream.
Oh, so the algorithm doesn't understand human error.
Exactly. Their risk assessment algorithms require pristine inputs to function. If the data is flawed, the mathematical risk profile of that truck spikes, and the system treats it as a threat.
Wow.
The industry has had to accept a really harsh truth. In the modern supply chain, accurate data is treated as being just as critical as the physical cargo itself. You cannot separate the two.
It's all just ones and zeros to the border.
Yep. CBP expects companies to meticulously self-police both their physical yards and their digital records. Perfection is just the baseline expectation now.
And beyond data accuracy, the source material notes a massive crackdown on trade fraud, specifically illegal transshipment schemes and country of origin fraud. How does a company actually execute that kind of fraud? And more importantly, how does CBP catch them?
So transshipment fraud is essentially a geographic shell game designed to dodge U.S. tariffs.
Okay, a shell game. Give me an example.
Let's say the United States slaps a heavy tariff on aluminum imported from an Asian country.
Right.
A fraudulent manufacturer will ship that raw aluminum from Asia to a warehouse in Mexico. They will lightly process it, maybe just cut it into different lengths, slap a fraudulent Made in Mexico sticker on it, and attempt to move it across the U.S. border under the USMCA Free Trade Agreement just to avoid the tariff.
That sounds incredibly difficult to physically detect if the metal is already inside a closed truck. How does the officer at the booth know where the metal originally came from?
The officer at the booth doesn't catch it. The algorithm catches it months in advance.
Months in advance.
CBP data analysts cross-reference the volume of raw materials a Mexican factory is importing against the volume of finished goods they are exporting to the United States.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. If a facility in Mexico is suddenly exporting 10 times more aluminum than they have the domestic capacity to produce, CBP knows they're acting as an illegal pass-through.
So they just flag the whole facility.
Exactly. They will flag every single truck originating from that facility for intensive auditing.
So what does this all mean? We started out talking about the invisible gauntlet your online order has to run to reach your porch. And what we've uncovered is that Customs and Border Protection is vastly more powerful than a simple inspection checkpoint.
They really are.
They aren't just officers waving flashlights at truck tires. Through massive data aggregation, anti-jumping enforcement, and strict trusted trader programs, CBP basically acts as the invisible hand shaping the speed, the efficiency, and ultimately the profitability of the entire North American transportation market.
That's entirely accurate.
Because if you master their systems, you capture the market. But if you treat border compliance as an afterthought, your business will just bleed out in the secondary inspection lot.
And that leaves us with a rather profound implication for the future of the industry. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder based on the trajectory we've explored today.
Lay on us.
If flawless electronic data compliance, pristine administrative accuracy, and participation in incredibly complex, expensive security programs are now the absolute baseline just for survival at the border.
Right.
What happens to the small, independent owner-operator? Will the sheer financial and administrative cost of crossing the border eventually eradicate the mom-and-pop trucking companies entirely, forcing all international freight strictly into the hands of a few massive corporate mega-carriers who can afford armies of compliance officers?
Man, it really makes you wonder who will be left to drive those trucks in 10 years. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Next time you click buy and see that cheerful 2-day shipping guarantee, keep questioning the complex, invisible systems and the algorithms at the border that bring the world directly to your doorstep. Catch you next time.